My name is Tara Hoffman, and I'm on the conference committee, and I welcome you all. And thank you for your bravery, to all of those who have spoken, and thanks to everybody for contributing to these important conversations. I have a background in journalism. I started my career in journalism, so I'm extra pleased to introduce our keynote speakers, our keynote conversation for lunch. Genevieve Angelson is an actress and writer who most recently starred in Girls Revolt, an acclaimed Amazon original series which follows a group of young women researchers who file a class action lawsuit against their employer demanding equal pay and equal opportunity to become reporters. And Thuy Vu is a 5-time Emmy-award winning journalist and anchor, currently the host of KQED Newsroom, which you can find online, on the radio, and on KQED TV. Genevieve and Thuy will be in conversation about how we tell stories, who decides what stories are told, and why it's so important for us to continue telling our own. Please welcome Genevieve and Thuy.
Genevieve flew up from LA for this, so thank you very much.
That distant land, Los Angeles.
Well, in many ways it is distant from us folks here in the Bay Area. Culturally, some would say.
You're not wrong. Yeah.
Well, we're supposed to talk about media and stories.
What are we going to
talk
I
about?
don't know.
There's so little happening in the world
This
these
is
days.
the real deal. I just play this on TV. I don't know what to contribute. I'm just
Well,
kidding.
I don't know how many of you guys have seen Genevieve's series. Yes, see? Good Girls Revolt on Amazon.
Thank you.
But your most recent acting role was that of Patti Robinson, the main character.
Yes.
And we actually, for those who haven't seen it, we have a clip of the show just to kind of introduce you to the show a little bit. And this is about that moment when there is an attorney who is looking at the contract at Newsweek, and well, not the contract, the magazine at Newsweek, and telling you and someone else on the staff, did you ever look at this and see who are the names heading the organization?
You know, before we show, I just don't want to assume that everyone in this room has seen, a TV show on Amazon Prime. There's a lot to do. I know there's a lot to watch. I haven't even started Kimmy Schmidt. This show was based on a book written by a woman named Lynn Povich, who was working at Newsweek magazine in 1969. And in 1969, if you worked at Newsweek and you were a woman, you were a researcher. And all of the people who were actually journalists and had their names on bylines were men. It just so happened that at the time, some of the great minds were working in the research department. Lynn Povich herself is absolutely brilliant. Nora Ephron worked there and is a character on the show. A poet named Judy Gingold. So anyway, these women, ultimately, the series is about these women kind of banding together and
you see this?
And filing a lawsuit for gender discrimination, which ultimately changed the face of the workplace forever on paper, and not at all, in fact. That's not true, not at all. But in 2009, they found that at Newsweek, women were still being promoted less and paid less in 2009.
And in 2017 as well.
Okay. Woof. So anyway, this is a clip from the show.
I used to hide my eyes in the shadows, stay blind to the light of day.
I don't want to just watch the news. I want to feel a part of it.
You're never going to get your name on this page. You good with that?
Dun, dun, dun.
I love your expression there. It's like, oh.
Thanks.
But, I mean, you're an actress, you're a writer, you're a storyteller, and as you were doing this series, what parts of that resonated with you? Because I'm sure that there's also elements of it that are true outside of the media landscape, and probably even more true in Hollywood, which is your real universe.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Gosh. There's so much that I want to say, and I know I'm going to walk away from here being like, okay, just 3,000 more things. L'esprit d'escalier. But the thing that I particularly related to about Patti is that she has this, God, I say related to, but what I really mean is aspire to, which is that I think she has this incredible self-esteem that enables her to sort of say, well, why not me? Well, why can't I do it? And, you know, I think that that's something that I have learned a lot from, and really since the show has wrapped, have incorporated as kind of an ethos in my life, which is that, you know, I sort of look at the way things are today, and whereas in the past I may have been unbelievably overwhelmed by how much work I see that there is to do, I think now, for me, the balance is having the sort of peace of mind to say, I can only do one woman's work. I don't have to solve the universe. However, one woman can get a lot of work done. And if not me, who? You know, okay, there's a local municipal election going on in LA. It's inconvenient to vote in a local municipal election for stuff that seems like, you know, not as big as the stuff that we have been voting on. But if I don't make it to the polls, who's supposed to vote? If I don't, you know, if I don't at least consider, this is not an announcement, but it's something that's been on my mind. If I don't at least consider, you know, we keep talking about getting women to consider running for public office. If I don't at least think about what that would look like in my life, who's supposed to do it? Someone who has fewer resources or more children or more, you know, so I think that's what I really hoped to connect to with Patti, which is that she has this kind of bodacious spirit of like, I'll do it. I'll do it. I think that also has probably gotten me jobs I didn't have any business having. Like walking into an audition room and just thinking, your problems are solved. Here I am. This job is for me, whether or not it really should have been.
But I like that. I like that level of confidence. But, you know, watching the show, and because I work in the news business myself, watching the show, I think there were some key elements of it that resonated for me, which is, even though we've come, thankfully, quite a bit of ways from the 1960s when women were only in the role of researchers and researching only for men, never to be the actual reporter, never to be the actual storyteller or the person to get credit for it. Now, of course, we have women who write for major publications, we have women on TV, we have women on the radio. But, you know, there are elements of sex discrimination, and it's not always overt. And most publications, most major media organizations in this country are still headed by men. It's majority. What is special about the Bay Area, I will say, are a couple of things. Where I work, my show is dominated by women. My newsroom is dominated by women at KQED.
Awesome.
Yeah, so thank you.
Can we talk a little bit about your story? Just
Sure.
Sorry to interrupt your question. I just sort of would love to know, you know, I do it on TV, you do it in real life. What has your journey looked like? How did you get here?
It's a long story, but I'll truncate it for you guys. I mean, I wasn't born in this country. I came to the U.S. as a refugee from Vietnam as part of the whole refugee exodus at the end of the Vietnam War. So I was one of the boat people, actually, who came to this country. And so I actually lived in a couple of refugee camps before relocating to Duluth, Minnesota, because that's where a Lutheran church group decided to sponsor us. So it was my family of 8 and my grandma, you know, going from Saigon, which is now Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam, to Duluth, Minnesota, land of the 20 degrees below zero winters, right? So just a slight change of environment there. And then we eventually made our way to California, but to make a long story short, I only applied to one university, UC Berkeley, because that was the university I really wanted, and I knew my family wasn't a family of means, and I knew that we wouldn't be able to afford an Ivy League school like a Harvard or a Stanford, and I was just going to go for the best public education I could get, and that was going to be UC Berkeley. So thank God I got in. And, whew, is right. More like, whew. And I majored in, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just knew I wanted to go to a good university. I came in undeclared and then was kind of trying, going through that self-discovery process that you go through in college. And then I stumbled upon a rhetoric class because I needed it to satisfy an English requirement, but all the English classes were full, so I thought, I'll just take rhetoric. It'll satisfy the requirement. Same thing. I actually fell in love with it, and it was, and what, first of all, what is rhetoric, and who goes to school to major in that, right? So, but there's a lot of argumentative writing and a lot of reading the great Greek philosophers and understanding great oratory involves not speaking skills necessarily, although that's a plus, but what it really takes is analytical skills to make a great speech and to be a really great orator. And so I loved that part of it, having to do that critical analysis of not only what you think, but of what the other person thinks, and being able to get into someone else's mind and be able to rebut that person. So it really, back then I didn't know I wanted to be a journalist, but now in hindsight, it's turned out to be the perfect training for what I do now. And so did some college radio, fell in love with broadcasting, and did it in the Bay Area right out of college. Started at KQED Radio as a cub reporter, and then kind of worked my way up, fell into TV, left KQED, and recently came back about 3 years ago to launch a show for them. And if you're familiar with KQED, my show replaced a long, well-loved show, This Week in Northern California with Belva Davis. She held that post for 20 years. So when she retired, they retired the show with her. So I figure if I can even get a good 10 years in, it'll be great. It doesn't even have to be 20. But so yeah, that's my story in a nutshell.
So something that comes up on the show a lot is obviously that the workplace is very sexualized. This is a period piece, this is 1969, surely that has not evaporated, but what happens a lot is that the women are people who the men would flirt with and date and consider to be sort of sexual objects, and they didn't even have the option at the time of being writers. And what I have found is that that's one thing when you are a journalist, and it's sort of a whole other thing when your profession is in a visual medium, where my body and my appearance are part of my, they're part of my financial livelihood. And probably a part of why certain people get some roles and other people get others. And so it's really demanded a lot of kind of come to Jesus about like what my own attitude is going to be about the way that I consider my appearance, the way that I take care of my body, the way that I, and it just seemed to me that it was something that was worth talking about in a room full of young women and people who educate young women. And I guess I just wonder, you come from, you're working so successfully in this tradition of where not so long ago women as anchors were maybe weather girls. How have you kind of reconciled taking care of yourself and being proud of the person you represent with this element of what we do that is sort of inherently about looks?
Well, I think it's less inherently about looks what I do than what you do, actually. I think you actually have a tougher road. I'll answer the question, and then I'm going to turn the tables on you. I mean, obviously, there's more pressure on women in TV news than on men, right? I mean, women in TV news are supposed to look a certain way, take care of ourselves, dress a certain way, and never, ever age, whereas the men can age as much as they want. So there is always that ongoing pressure. But I think that as you age, and I am way older than I look, I will tell you. I mean, people are kind of shocked to learn that I was...
What are you doing? Talk to me after this.
Middle-aged, baby. But, I think people are often surprised to learn that I was a refugee at the end of the Vietnam War. That happened, 40 years ago. So, what comes with age, I think, is the ability to grow comfortable in your own skin. And I can say that I wasn't always that way. I mean, I remember when I worked at a TV station, which will not go named because I'm a local girl, and if I tell you, you'll know what station, and you might even know some of the people there. But there was a particular assignment editor who when the women reporters walked in, always hugged us and gave us a kiss on the cheek. Now, at the time, I thought, well, he's my friend, that's not a big deal. But then as I thought about it, it kind of made me uncomfortable. That's kind of inappropriate behavior in a workplace, right? For a professional woman reporting the news to be like grabbed by the assignment editor, hugged and kissed every morning. But to me, and here's the thing, and I know there are a lot of young girls in the room, I felt like, well, it's not intentional. He's not meaning to commit sexual harassment, so it's kind of okay, and he's my friend. Well, it wasn't okay. It wasn't okay with some of the women there, and they filed a complaint. And so then he had to stop doing it. But that was a good awakening for me. I was a young reporter at the time, but that was a good awakening to me in terms of learning your power and learning to exercise that power. The women who brought that complaint were the older reporters who were comfortable in their own skin. I was not yet, because I was still a newbie. But watching them taught me a lot about the need to stand up for yourself. And if you're really uncomfortable about it, which I was, say something about it, which I did not. So over the years, I've learned to identify what makes me uncomfortable, take it up with the right people, and then make sure something's done about it. But that's really an evolutionary process, I think. I think it comes with age and some hindsight, and absolutely have a strong support network where you are, wherever you work, wherever you play or socialize, because that network is going to be so critical when you take that step of complaining and saying something, to have people have your back. And so I think that would be my advice to a lot of the young women in the room is really think about it, think about why it makes you uncomfortable, what would you like to do about it, what would you like to have management do about it, and then make sure that you have a good level of support behind you.
I so appreciate that. I really do. I've only ever found that, a lot of the fear that I've encountered speaking up about things that make me uncomfortable is alleviated personally when I consider the idea that what I'm doing isn't just for me. That to speak up on behalf of my own dignity and self-respect is an act of community service. And maybe I don't know the name of the woman who this might help, but that if it's that question of, if not me, who? If I don't speak up, whose job is it to speak up when something is unfair or uncomfortable or, molesty? That's so gross.
But for you, you're, in the acting world, in the entertainment world, as you said, your body and your looks and your hair and your skin, that's all part of your stock and trade. How do you reconcile that with also, the merits of what you bring to your job as an actress?
Thank you. Imperfectly. And here is what it looks like for me. As aforementioned, I live in Hollywood. It's a different universe. In some ways. In other ways, it's just a more overt example of everything that goes on beneath the surface in, Seattle and Fayetteville and New Orleans and every small town in the United States. So what I have found is that if I decide for myself that my worth is about my age, the number on the scale, what color my hair is, what size clothes I fit into, that is exactly what I'm going to get back. And that it is typically a beast that will never be fed. And that what actually helps me, without fail, is a good investment, is my investing in being the best actor I can be, in being the most of the greatest service I can be. And if I decide to try to distinguish myself as pretty, I won't. There are millions more beautiful women than I in in Los Angeles, and I appreciate that about them. And also, I am actually, I think, an even more exciting commodity because I went to graduate school. Like, I've been on Broadway. I read books for fun. I read the New York Times, and that is actually, you know, there are more roles for women playing doctors and lawyers, and I really could do that in real life, I think. And that is actually the thing that makes me like myself the most. And so if I start thinking about when is everyone else getting Botox? And how much should I eat? And, you know, that kind of stuff, it's like, that's what I get at the end of the day is Botox and a meal plan. And if I think about oh my gosh, you know, what's gonna really reach, what is the most human reaction I could have when you know, Christy Amatopoulos, who plays Finn in the show, walks by my desk and says, "Atta girl." How complex is that experience? How simultaneously exciting and tantalizing and belittling and uplifting all at once. Like, pulling that off is the thing that at the end of the day gives me self-esteem, catharsis, a growth of character. And I don't remember what I had, you know, what I look like when I do it, you know, so.
Well, what I love about, as I'm sitting here listening to you talk, right, is that it's so important to have women like you have a strong sense of self, because I think it does affect how women are represented in the media, whether it's in news or in entertainment, on stage, because you will bring that strong voice to whatever stories are told.
So here's something, when you say media, this is just something that I've been thinking about coming up to this day, which is that I don't know what that word means. You know, unlike in 1969, there isn't a media. There isn't one media. When you know, in politics we're saying like the lion media or whatever, it's like I'm watching and listening to one thing, you're watching and listening to something completely different. Who I follow on Twitter, who I follow on Instagram, I could be getting and am getting a completely different set of information than everybody else who has a Twitter feed, unlike a time where there were, you know, 4 channels and we all watched the evening news. And why am I mentioning this? I completely forgot.
I'm not sure.
So I had never heard of before, and I don't know how old the youngest person is in the room, but I had never heard of before this thing about cam girls and pornography and the amount of women who do amateur pornography, and how those websites are more frequented than Netflix and Hulu and YouTube and combined, and that is in fact, that is in fact where the most women in media are employed and seen and doing that. And so it just occurs to me that that could all be going on without my even knowing about it, because I don't follow it on Twitter. And yet it's the biggest impact on screen that women have in this country. And I think that is what I would like to draw attention to, is that, you know, for God's sakes, not everybody is watching Good Girls Revolt on Amazon Prime. It's still out there. You can still watch it. You can still buy it. But really, not everybody is even reading the news that happened today the same. So.
Well, see, you can do something about that as a woman who is passionate about that. I will say this. I think that it matters tremendously to have women's voices in newsrooms, on movie sets, because, and you know what I've come to discover is that is that despite all the stuff that we've heard about the Trump era, and there are many pockets of the country where overt racism takes place, here in the Bay Area, it's never really overt, but it lies under the surface. People are they're too smart to express it outright. Sometimes they do express it outright, but most often they don't. Sometimes they do express it outright because actually shortly after Trump was elected, somebody posted in the comments section on my Facebook site, "Go back to where you came from." Can you believe that? And it was incredible to me. Before Trump's election, I don't think anybody would have had the nerve to post that publicly on my Facebook. And my site is a public site, so people can do that. But I thought that was very interesting. But most often, it is under the surface, it's unexpressed, and sometimes I think it's unintentional. But just because it's unintentional does not make it right. It's still wrong and it's still unconstitutional. And I think that's the thing that we need to recognize. And there's one other thing I will say is that these battles are like small battles that you fight at a time, right? Very few of us will have a major battle in life where we fight it and we were like, yeah, I affected thousands of lives that one day. But all those little battles that you do every day add up to something big. And I will just use one example. A number of years ago, there was a woman who stopped me in the middle of the street, recognized me. I was doing a live shot, said, "Thuy, I have a great idea for you. I'm a photographer, and a bunch of photographers, professional photographers like myself, we band together and we just help parents who have where the woman is pregnant and the child is critically ill and not expected to survive birth beyond a few weeks. And we go in and we offer to take professional photos of their newborn for them, because what we've discovered is that they're so traumatized and so stressed out in those early days, they forget to take pictures of the baby. And then the baby passes away and they have no pictures of that baby. And she thought, could you please do a story on our work? And I thought about it, and I thought that is such a beautiful community thing to do. So I go to my boss at the TV station, which will go unnamed, and said, I have this great story idea, and we would be the only ones who have it. And he listens to it, and he goes, I don't know. That sounds really macabre to me, to like have pictures of, dead babies and be talking about death on our air. And it was not intentional on his part, but here's a white male in his 30s, never been married, has no kid. I was married at the time, had a child, understood from a very visceral gut point of view what that must feel like to give birth to a child and have no pictures of that child. I wanted this story told. So I told him, I said, I don't think of it that way at all. I think of it as something quite beautiful, that here are parents who want to preserve lasting memories of their child, and here are people willing to give their time and their love to do it for them pro bono. I think it's actually a story about beauty and life and community support. And I will do this story, and you're gonna love it. and then he said, oh, I don't know. And I said, I'm gonna do this story, and you're gonna love it. And I think he just wanted me out of his hair. He said, geez, just go do it already. So I did it. It went on to win an Emmy-award. So.
Yeah, girl.
But I'm not telling that story so much for the fact that, it won an Emmy, but for the fact that you have to commit to what you believe in, and you have to fight for it. And that was a small fight. It's not going to save thousands of lives in the world, but it did help bring a story to light to the thousands of people who did see it. But I think it also, I hope, enlightened him and opened up his thinking about how to think about stories from a female perspective, a family perspective. And I'm not sure that he, as a young, unmarried man with no child, would ever have understood that unless a woman brought that perspective to him. So I just, raised that story as a way that we can all make a difference. Even if it seems like something minor, we can all make a difference.
Yeah, something minor. What is Slap Ass Friday? Did anyone else catch that? That was it just slipped in there real quick, and I was like, can we go back to Slap-Ass Friday? What is that? Unbelievable.
So where would you like to see Hollywood be in the next 5 years? I mean, if you could wave your magic wand and see one big difference happen, what would that be?
I don't know how to answer that at all, but I will tell you that last night I watched The Bachelorette, and here's what really stuck out to me. In the very beginning of The Bachelorette last night, I will answer your question, but in the very beginning of The Bachelorette last night, this woman is sitting with her friends, and here we have the first Black Bachelorette. She's 32 years old. She's like age appropriate, and she's sitting with her friends, and one of them actually says to her, "You need to take your lawyer hat off and just let yourself be romanced." And I thought, you need to keep that lawyer hat on. You are about to have 30 con artists come up to you and tell you that they love you, and you need better friends who are gonna say, you put that hat on and that scarf on and those gloves on and you carry the Constitution. But I just thought, here we are, huge steps forward and just a little step back, because we start the show off with girls saying, listen, most importantly, find true love. And I just think most importantly, balance that career and that personal life. Great. I think that is actually something that I find myself thinking about, is what part of the female story I would really like to tell. And I think part of that is the story of, God, what happens to women in their 30s in their closest personal friends of, if you're not married, are you okay? Are you worried about getting married? Have you had a baby? Are you not able to have a baby? Why don't you want a baby? So I don't know. That's those questions about because I have a phenomenal career and I'm super satisfied by it. And I date all the time just for fun. Those are not answers that I hear being really sought after goals, but those are my goals. So anyway.
Oh, okay. I see time's up. But I just have this one quote, because I did read the book Good Girls Revolt. I didn't get to finish it, but the book that your series is based on, and I just want to finish off with one quote that I thought was so telling about. I mean, even now, many decades later, it's still so true. So Phil Graham, publisher of the Washington Post, went on to buy Newsweek. And so in April 1963, he visited the London correspondents in the London Bureau, and he said this about the mission. He said, "So let us today drudge on about our inescapably impossible task of providing every week a first rough draft of history that will never really be completed, about a world we can never really understand." Does that pretty much sound familiar about the world we're in right now? I mean, I feel like I'm not writing just a rough draft of history every week. I feel like I'm writing it every hour. We have a president who likes to do a draft of his thoughts on Twitter every single minute. So there you go.
I just want to say, honestly, I cannot think of a room I would be more, that I would want to be in more today. Last night, little girls were targeted, and I don't think that that's an accident. I don't think that acts of terrorism are ever undeliberate in their targets, and I just can't emphasize enough how important it is to me to see everybody in here really trying to do something for what I would argue is really the strongest group of Americans we have as teenage girls. I really think that they are unbelievably resilient people. And thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We have time for a couple of questions. I'd like to start with one for Thuy. We have a lot of stories in this room. As a journalist, what's your best advice for telling those stories from these organizations and these girls? How can we get those stories out there?
The best way is to make a connection with someone at the news organization, and get the email of someone. I mean, it's actually really easy. It takes so little homework to find somebody's email in a news organization. It's really basic, right? I'm Thuy Vu at KQED.org. Any other reporter at KQED that you like, you just use the first initial of that person's name, the last name at KQED.org, and you can email them directly. So I You know, the emails that make me open them and read them at length are from people who give me a sense of that they know what I cover, and therefore they feel a connection and know that I will be interested in it, as opposed to just random. And I get so many random emails from all across the country from people wanting to, from people wanting me to cover something, but clearly no idea of what I do. I don't want to cover your, you know, your latest cooking gadget. Not that there's no space for that in the universe, but that's not what I do. So that clearly indicates to me that you have not taken the time to understand what it is that I do, or make me understand why it is I would be interested in your story. So if you can just invest, even if it's like 10, 15 minutes of research into which reporter covers the kinds of stories that you want told, and say, hey, Thuy, caught your story on blah, 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 blah the other day, thought it was really interesting. I'm doing something related. We can even expand it. Have you thought about this angle or that angle or this angle? Give me a reason to be interested, and a reason to make me think, wow, that story hasn't been told. Or wow, that story that I did tell could be told better if I had you in it. But, you know, we're all really busy. I'll be really honest. All of us reporters are so busy. That if you can help us a little bit by investing that little bit of time, it'll make your story idea more likely to be noticed.
Thank you. And I would like just to get one question from a girl in the room. Anybody? I know you have a question. Just, if you have it, somebody else has it. I'm walking this way. Anybody? Girls? Anybody who used to be a girl have a question?
I'm lying, I'm still a girl. Aren't we all? Isn't this just a great presentation today? Let's all give a round of applause. Thank you so much. Thuy, question for you. All the nonprofits here, we know that people don't read the news. We know there are so fewer news outlets. What's your best advice now if we want to get publicity for our stories, which are the kinds of stories you advise that we promote? What's the top 3 best things you could suggest that organizations do to get their messages out? Again, in a world where there's just such a diminishing availability of publicity opportunities. Thanks.
She's probably got a great answer, but mine is find a celebrity to represent you and get them to put it on their social media feed with 4.m million trillion followers, right? I mean, get a spokesperson who can really represent you with a lot of people who follow them on Snapchat.
Ashley, you should do my job. That was going to be one of my tips, actually. Well, first of all, one of the tips I already gave you, connect, really make a connection with a reporter or reporters who cover the beat that you're in. Secondly, that celebrity connection, never undermine that. I mean, there's a group here in San Francisco across the bridge called Wild Aid, and they work on cutting down on the trafficking of endangered animals. I'll tell you, they were just kind of a tiny little nonprofit, but then they got all these major celebrities interested, right? They had the 2 princes from England interested, and they also have Yao Ming from China did a promo for them, and he did a wonderful promo for them talking about, cutting down on the ivory trade in China. And since then, the level of money they've been able to bring in and the level of coverage they've been able to bring in has been phenomenal. So never underestimate getting a known name, a known brand to sympathize and take on your cause. And third, this is kind of related to what Genevieve just said, which is the celebrities have their social media, but you all have the power for social media as well. Leverage the heck out of Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, because that provides an incredible scaling up that you can do on your own. Think of something as basic as the hashtag Black Lives Matter, right? That was started by a woman here in Oakland. She was just like venting about what happened, about the injustice of the way that young black men are treated by law enforcement in this country. And she put a hashtag, Black Lives Matter, on it. Well, it went viral. And then because it went viral, it became a story for the rest of the media to pick up. So there's great power in harnessing social media for your purpose, your cause, and getting your message out there. Part of it is a little bit of a marketing thing. You have to think of it in terms of marketing terms as well. You know, what's a phrase that will sell? Black Lives Matter, very catchy, easy to remember, hits home. You know exactly what stories that message is talking about. So think about it in marketing terms. I think for a lot of, because I used to sit on the board of a nonprofit for nearly 9 years, and I know that it's easy to get stuck in that mentality of, we're doing so much good, and we're just out there in the community, we're helping people, but you have to think about it in marketing terms. All the help you're providing people is really, it's wonderful work, but unless you get your message out there effectively from a marketing standpoint, you will never scale up to the point where you want your organization to be. So think about the best way to tell that story, the slogan, the people to tell that story. Make a compelling video that you can post on Twitter or Facebook that's like just a few minutes long. Don't make it long. A few minutes long is all you need. It's jazzy, snappy, share it.
Oh, hi, hello, my name is Destiny Shabazz, and I'm 16, I go to McClimbers High School. I was just wondering, do you have any advice for African American or black females who are aspiring to be actresses or journalists?
I need to ask you to answer briefly because we do want to keep the afternoon moving. Thank you.
My experience with doing anything I want to do is that my part of it is my side of the street, and my side of the street usually has to do with the ways in which I say no to myself before anybody else can, the ways in which I rule myself out or cast myself or don't cast myself or tell myself no in ways that preempt other people doing it. And I have often found that when I don't do that, nobody else does either. And that there's something about just leading with the foot of I deserve absolutely everything I want that truly attracts that back to me.
Thank you.
A really exciting thing that we want to have happen now is that any girl who's here at this conference gets a free copy of the Good Girls Revolt book.